How strong was Samson? Samson's name literally translates to sunshine. He was raised as a Nazarene, which meant he could not drink alcohol or cut his hair. It is an extraordinary story about a man who struggled with women. He married, but the marriage ended before their honeymoon. He then moved on to a nameless prostitute before finally joining forces with Delilah, his mistress. However, many people have wondered how strong Samson was. Here are 5 instances that demonstrate his strength. Number 1. He slayed a lion with his bare hands. This all happened because Samson was determined to marry a Philistine woman, one of the adversaries of Israel. His father and mother sought to avert him, but he demanded. Then Samson went down to Timnah, and he saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So he came back and told his father and mother, "I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So now get her for me as a wife." But his father and his mother said to him, "Is there no woman among the daughters of your relatives, or among all our people, that you go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" Yet Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, because she is right for me." However, his father and mother did not know that this was of the Lord, for he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. And at that time, the Philistines were ruling over Israel. Then Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother, and came as far as the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion came roaring toward him. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, so that he tore it apart as one tears apart a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. So he went down and talked to the woman, and she looked pleasing to Samson. When he returned later to take her, he turned aside to look at the carcass of the lion, and behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the body of the lion. So he took out the honey on his hands, and went on, eating as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they ate it, but he did not tell them that he took the honey out of the body of the lion. Number 2. He won over 30 Philistines. A grand wedding feast was planned for Timnah, and Samson told a riddle, offering each of his 30 companions a full outfit if they could solve it. Otherwise, they would have to provide him with 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. The riddle was, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." It referred, of course, to his slaying of the lion and to his finding the honey in its carcass. When the men failed to guess the answer, they persuaded Samson's wife with threats to obtain the answer from him. Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, "You hate me. You don't really love me. You've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer." "I haven't even explained it to my father or mother," he replied, "so why should I explain it to you?" She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. So on the 7th day, he finally told her because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people. Before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, Judges chapter 14, verse 19. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 men of them, and took what they were wearing, and gave the outfits of clothes to those who told the riddle. And his anger burned, and he went up to his father's house. Number 3. He captured 150 pairs of foxes. On the 7th day, when the marriage should have been consummated, he returned home. His wife was given to his mate, his best man. Some time later, Samson wreaked even more havoc on the Philistines. He took a young goat and went to see his wife. But after a while, in the time of wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat as a gift of reconciliation, and he said, "I will go in to my wife in her room." But her father would not allow him to go in. Her father said, "I really thought you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is her younger sister not more beautiful than she? Please take her as your wife instead." Samson said to them, "This time I shall be blameless in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm." So Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and took torches, and turning the foxes tail to tail, he put a torch between each pair of tails. When he had set the torches ablaze, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines, and he burned up the heap of sheaves and the standing grain, along with the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines said, "Who did this?" And they were told, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he took Samson's wife and gave her to his chief companion at the wedding feast." So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Judges chapter 15, verse 1 through 6. Number 4. He slew 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. The Philistines learned the cause of this cruel and wasteful act and retaliated by burning to death Samson's wife and her father. But violence triggers more violence. When the Philistines marched after him, the men of Judah slavishly reminded him that the Philistines were their rulers. To protect their own skin, they agreed to tie Samson securely with ropes and turn him over to the enemy. Samson agreed to this as long as his own people did not try to kill him. They had devolved into vassals, preferring to betray their own countrymen and remain loyal to their oppressors rather than befriend Samson and free themselves. Judges chapter 15, verse 14 through 17. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and the ropes on his arms were like flax, linen that had been burned, and his bonds dropped off his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, so he reached out his hand and took it and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey I have struck down 1,000 men." When he finished speaking, he threw the jawbone from his hand, and he named that place Ramath Lehi, Hill of the Jawbone. There is a play on words in Judges chapter 15, verse 16, as if to say, "With the jawbone of an ass I have assassinated them," or "With the jawbone of an ass I have piled them in a mass. With the jawbone of an ass I have assailed assailants." Moffat. One might wonder why the Lord bestowed such a great victory with such an unlikely weapon. Samson was forbidden to touch anything unclean, and the jawbone was unquestionably unclean, being a part of a dead animal. But the unusual weapon made it clear that the victory was supernatural, bestowed by God through unlikely means. Number 5. He carried the city gates for nearly 40 miles. Number 6. He destroyed the temple of Dagon and slew 3,000 people. Samson then fell in love with Delilah, a Philistine woman. When this was discovered, the Philistine lords offered her a large reward if she could trick Samson into revealing the secret of his great strength. Samson broke down and revealed the secret of his strength to Delilah. While not the source of his power, his long hair was an outward manifestation of his Nazirite status, his separation from God. It was his relationship with God, not his hair, that made him strong. But if he lost his hair, he would be powerless. Delilah realized that she had discovered his secret. She summoned the Philistines while he was sleeping on her knees. C.H. Mackintosh observes, "The lap of Delilah proved too strong for the heart of Samson, and what 1,000 Philistines could not do was done by the ensnaring influence of a single woman." When Samson awoke, he tried to summon his strength, not knowing that the Lord had departed from him. The Philistines blinded Samson and imprisoned him in Gaza, forcing him to grind grain. This threefold degradation has been described as the binding, blinding, grinding bondage of sin. But his hair gradually began to grow back. When the Philistine lords held a large sacrifice in honor of their god, Dagon, they brought Samson forth as an example of what their god had done for them. They also forced him to entertain them with his feasts. During the feast, Samson took hold of the temple's 2 middle pillars, prayed to the Lord for strength, and then pushed the pillars down, demolishing the structure. Everyone was slain. Samson slew more people in his death than he had in his life, according to the sad record.